Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. It is exactly 8:41 a.m. And can you believe it is National Wills Week again? When my producer told me that I'm going to be talking to an attorney at Barakah Bank regarding the importance of having a will, I said to her, no, but that can't be. I just spoke to them recently. It was approximately a year ago that we spoke about this matter, and that just indicates how time flies. All the more reason we need to get our house in order. We need to make sure that all of our documentation is up to date, and very especially our wills. And that exactly is what Mohamed Raees Hussain, attorney at Al Barakah Bank, is going to talk to us about this morning. Mohamed Raees Hussain, Salaam alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah to Salam Media for hosting us this morning.
Absolute pleasure. We are obviously talking about a very important matter, and that is the importance of a will. Um, just how important is it to have a will? And I just realized I'm not even sure if my will has been updated. So I'm going to scurry off home and make sure that my paperwork is in order.
No, for certain, that needs to be done for every person, I think. So, for a Muslim, the importance of having an Islamic will cannot be stressed enough, especially where the Sharia laws of inheritance is not the law of the land, as is the case with Muslims residing in South Africa. The Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is reported to have said, "It is not permissible for any Muslim who has anything to will that he may pass even 2 nights without having his last will and testament written and kept with him." Accordingly, having an Islamic will ensure that upon your death, your assets are dealt with in accordance with the Sharia.
Okay, so what are some of the requirements of a valid will? And, I'm wondering about, Alhamdulillah, all of us as Muslims do have an Islamic will. What happens when you pass on? What happens regarding the state? Does that suggest that the situation then becomes, um, what is the terminology? Interstate. Uh,
Interstate, correct.
yeah. And just explain that concept to us as well.
So I think when anyone sets out to make their will, it is important to have cognizance of the requirements. These are obviously regulated in terms of the Wills Act, and in order for your will to be considered a valid will and to be given effect to, there are certain requirements that one must adhere to. Firstly, a person making a will has to be of the age of 16 years or older. The will has to be in writing. The will must be signed by the person making the will, so that would be your testator or testatrix, as well as two competent witnesses. Your witnesses have to be independent and must be of the age of 14 years or older. Any alterations to the will has to be signed by the testator and those witnesses that have signed your will. And the will has to be dated. This point cannot be stressed enough. A will has to be dated, as this signifies the last will of the testator, especially where there are more than one will in place. So, in respect of an Islamic will, the same requirements would apply. However, most notably, the significant difference is that no heirs are stipulated in an Islamic will. This is due to your Sharia heirs only being determined upon your death. To answer your second question with regard to the interstate of your estate. So to pass away without a will means that your estate, correctly as you mentioned, would be administered in terms of the Interstate Succession Act, which would then determine the shares that your surviving spouse as well as heirs would receive, which is contrary to the Sharia. So in the event of a Muslim passing away without a valid Islamic will, there would be both consequences in this world as well as in the hereafter, as you would have failed to have discharged your duty in ensuring that your assets have been distributed according to the Sharia to your rightful heirs.
Coming back to the Sharia will, let's assume you have two or more children. Let's also assume, just for the ease of this discussion, some of them are girls and some of them are boys. Is it okay? I've noticed amongst the community that there does seem to be a practice in place where parents are gifting their girl children um, property or whatever the case may be, because according to Sharia, girl children get less of the share of the world than boy children, and we understand the reasons for that, because the males in their family, their husbands or their fathers or their brothers, are there to take care of them, to provide for them if they don't have anyone to care for them. And that's the reason why the males get the larger portion. So that's the one issue. The second issue is also, what about if you only have boy children? How, according to Sharia, do you have to notarize that on your Islamic will, or does that automatically, get distributed equally amongst them on your passing?
So to answer the first question, where members gift assets to their children in their lifetime. So during your lifetime, you are entitled to and you are allowed to do with your assets as you please, as those assets belong to you. And in terms of the Sharia, there is no limitation on you then gifting your assets to whomsoever you wish. And notably, as you've mentioned, with regard to the distribution and the reasoning behind the male children receiving a significantly higher share than the female children. Obviously, like you mentioned, the male children in those instances would obviously need to take care of certain needs of those female heirs in the event that they do not have anyone else to do that for them. So, yeah, so to wrap that up in terms of distributing whilst you're alive, there is no limitation on that, and that is perfectly fine. Obviously, in terms of your distribution once you pass away, that will then be dictated in terms of the laws of Sharia. And with
Is it
regard,
also, carry on, please?
sorry, just to answer the second part of that question, where you have just male children or heirs that would inherit from your estate. Obviously, in distributing an Islamic estate, what would be obtained in then distributing that estate is a distribution certificate from a suitable organization such as the Jamiat Ulama and the like, which will then determine the share that each child or each heir would receive. And obviously, in the case of there being only male children who survive you, then obviously that will then be an equal distribution between those male children.
What are some of the practical considerations which a person must take into account when making a will, and something that we don't like to even think about, and that is preparing for death?
Death is a certainty, and as mentioned in the Quran, every soul will taste death. As such, it is not only important to have a valid Islamic will in place, but equally important to make the necessary arrangements to alleviate uncertainty and the stress of your family upon your demise. Some of these considerations would include providing a copy of your will to your executor, as well as your family members, and advising them where the original is located so that can be easily retrieved upon your death. Preparing and maintaining a schedule of your assets and liabilities, which will be a guide for your executor in the administration of your estate. This obviously alleviates the pressure on your family to now compile a listing of your assets and liabilities, which would then need to be administered. This should include bank account details, a list of properties that you own, any insurance policies, pension and provident fund, and the like. You should prepare a file with these important documents together with a copy of your ID and marriage certificate if you are married, together with copies of your spouse's ID as well as the ID documents of your heirs. You need to also ensure that the necessary arrangements are made in respect of any minor children that you may have to ensure that their lives are not drastically affected once you pass away. Most importantly, you need to ensure that you leave behind sufficient funds for your dependents' living expenses, as your bank accounts will not be accessible after your death.
Okay, what is Al Barakah Bank's involvement or contribution towards this National Wills Week initiative? And also, is there an easy to follow template where one can just, get hold of and everything you've just outlined now? Is there something available to cover all of those points so that we can fill it out, share it with our executor or our heirs, and then file it away for the eventuality of our passing away?
So at Al Baraka, we understand the importance of having an Islamic will and have thus partnered with our panel attorneys and will be embarking on a wills campaign in Durban, Gauteng, and Cape Town. As part of this campaign, you will not only receive a free Sharia compliant will, but will also be able to consult with our attorneys, in house legal team, as well as our Sharia team. This campaign will be held in Durban on the 12th and 13th of September, in Lenasia and Lodium on the 13th of September, Fordsburg on the 14th, Rosebank on 15th, and in Cape Town on the 14th and 15th. So, with regard to obtaining a copy of the will or having a consultation with any of our legal experts, you may obviously come to the branches as mentioned a little while ago, and then you will receive a free Sharia compliant will together with a consultation with our experts, and you can obviously put yourself to rest with regards to knowing that you have answered any questions that you may have. A copy of our will is also located on the bank's website, together with frequently asked questions, which will guide you in obviously uh, answering any questions that you may have. And the Sharia will is very simple to complete. So uh, there are documentations that you may require in order to complete it. That being your ID document, you obviously need to complete the manner in which you are married. Together with that, you need to complete it as mentioned earlier. You need to sign and have that witnessed as well. So it's a fairly simple will to complete and put into place. And every Muslim out there who has or who does not have a will is encouraged to utilize this initiative. Go out to any of the branches and obviously have your will completed correctly to ensure that upon your death, your estate is administered in terms of the Sharia law.
And finally, the one most important question is, will the Islamic will hold us in good stead in terms of you won't automatically your will won't automatically, or your state won't automatically go into interstate management once you pass away. Your Islamic will hold up, and your wishes will be followed via the Islamic will that you've left behind.
Yes, so in terms of South African law, each person is allowed to have a will. So you have freedom of testation in that you are allowed to have your estate distributed as per your wishes. So
Ah, okay.
if you choose to have your estate administered in terms of the Sharia law, provided the requirements of a valid will are complied with, then this will not be an issue, and your wishes that your estate be administered in terms of the Sharia will be adhered to.
Shukran very much. I could keep you here for the next hour or two. So many more questions to ask, but shukran very much to you and everyone at Al Barakah Bank for making this service available and possible for us at no fee, I should imagine. Shukran. And thank you indeed for bringing this very, very important issue to our attention. Go well, keep us in your du'as. And salaam alaikum to you, Mohamed Raees Hussain, attorney at Al Barakah Bank.
Shukran for having us. Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.